Well, why did you come here? Help me to understand.
You're a sick son of a bitch.
Let's go sunning, it's so good for you. Let's go sunning, neath the sky of blue. Greet the sun every morn. Feel as free and happy as the day you were born. Let's go native, sun your cares away. Be creative, learn to live and play. Pretty flowers need the sun. This applies to everyone.
There's never been a better time to take a look at Walter Babst, a sick son of a bitch who once went by the screen name Kinky Man in Corona. Babst was emblematic of everything that made this show funny and successful. The fact that he was a teacher shocked people, and his realization that it was To Catch a Predator showed that even though these guys knew the risks, they were still willing to roll the dice. And I wanted to do a kind of different approach on this analysis video. Instead of just commenting on the nonverbals, I wanted to see if we collectively could try and extrapolate and make inferences based off of the limited information that we have. So I want to see if we can use abductive reasoning to basically see if we can prove certain things or figure out his motivations for particular actions. So shout out to Super TCAP for posting this fucking 10 years ago. And without any further ado, let's see this sick son of a bitch get roasted.
If you want something for the fridge, go ahead and get it.
Okay. And the monosyllabic answer, his immediate K, he sounds very nervous, and he would be nervous. The fact that he immediately recognizes that he's fucked as soon as he sees Chris Hansen shows that he's already thinking that this could be a setup. He's already in a defensive and heightened state of agitation just because he knows what he's doing is fucking criminal.
Hey, how are you? I'm good. You have a seat right over there, please. I'm under arrest.
And he's putting his hand out right there. Very interesting.
I'm under arrest. No, I want to talk to you.
So when Babs is confronted on To Catch a Predator, he just immediately thrusts his hand out to do a handshake, which is an instinctual response that a lot of us would do. But it's awkward that he would immediately revert to that in this fucking time. This is not the time to raise out a handshake to try and introduce yourself.
Would you have a seat right over there, please? I'm under arrest. No, I want to talk to you.
And the question, am I under arrest? He knows. He's immediately aware that he's going to be fucked legally, and he knows that he's made a life-changing mistake that will have ripple effects that will change his life permanently.
What's your name?
John.
I knew it. Go ahead and rest.
You knew what?
What's your name? John, I knew it.
John,
what?
I knew it. Go ahead and rest.
You knew what? No, just sit down. John, what's your last name?
Hunter.
And of course, that's a bullshit name. His name is Walter Babst. So why would he lie? If he knows that it's a sting, and if he knows that it's law enforcement, why would he try and lie about who he is? Misrepresenting yourself to an officer is a crime in and of itself. So if it's futile, it doesn't make sense as to why he'd do that.
43.
43.
And what are you doing here?
Getting my ass kicked.
And he's so graphic.
Yeah.
He speaks with like metaphors, and he just uses like kind of. Babst is one of the more intelligent predators on the show, I believe. And I could say that just based off of so the immediate recognition of what was going on, the fact that he takes a novel approach. I mean, he's not intelligent enough to solve what is going on, but he's capable of performing the basic kind of reasoning that is required just to navigate daily life and complex tasks as well. He was a math teacher, and I mean, math is fucking difficult. There's a lot of rules, like there's a lot of shit going on in like a calculus problem. So the fact that Babst is capable of managing these small complex problems, like, you know, in math and trig and whatnot, shows that he has some level of intellect, some level of raw intellect.
I knew it. I knew it was a setup.
No, I need you to sit down, please.
I need you to just arrest me, take me to jail, and execute me.
Why would you say that?
I need you to just arrest me, take me to jail, and execute
I
me.
need to talk to you first.
And Chris totally flexes when he says, I need to talk to you first. Like, he's not discounting that he's going to be executed. He's just saying, like, dude, okay, we could proceed with the execution, but first we're going to need you to fucking sit down.
You know what? I didn't bring anything. I didn't want to do anything. Whatever.
Lies. So the fact that he didn't bring anything, the decoy insisted that he bring Mike's Hard Lemonade, and he agreed to bringing it. So maybe he's trying to articulate that the fact that he didn't bring the mics means that he didn't also have intent to carry out what he talked about in the chat. But the fact that he didn't bring the mics doesn't necessarily mean that. It just means that he didn't bring the mics. So the fact that he didn't fulfill one thing that he talked about doesn't necessarily mean that he wasn't going to fulfill a completely separate thing that he was going to talk about. He still had, I would argue, the criminal intent that he had when he was typing all the bullshit. He had that when he was showing up to the door.
You come here, though. Help me to understand.
Because I'm a sick son of a
Sick son of a bitch.
I've never done it before.
And why would you say that?
Because I'm a sick son of a I've never done it before. I talk about it online all the time.
Okay, he talks about it online all the time. So, and Babst is going to say something else that is indicative of the kind of state of mind that a lot of these guys are going through.
What, I mean, do you have a compulsion? An addiction to the internet?
And this.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
An addiction to the internet?
He looks away. So it seems that, and it really sucks for people who often have difficulties making eye contact, because people often assume that a lack of eye contact means that you're lying. It doesn't necessarily mean that. That's kind of just like an American construct. I mean, there's little scientific evidence to support a correlation between looking people in the eyes and lying. At least on an academic level. So the fact that he looks away, I wonder if it's a performance, if he's just trying to sell and make it seem like this is difficult. But at the same time, Babst could be genuinely concerned. This could be a realization for him that, geez, the fucking shit that I've talked about, the shit that I've saturated my mind in, like this is the realization of the extent of his depravity. So this is a really difficult one. I'd love to hear theories about this in the comments, about what this specific pause and look up was, whether it was a performance or whether it was just him struggling to connect and be honest with Chris. Yeah.
I've never done anything with anybody except my wife. Ever.
Ever.
No.
And that buys you nothing. There's nothing to be gained from saying that you've never done anything with anybody except your wife. All that means is that you haven't. Well, one, we don't know that you're telling the truth there. And then two, even if you were telling the truth, that doesn't mean that you didn't have intent to carry out all the crimes that you were talking about. So that doesn't negate all the shit that he said he was going to do.
I don't even know. And you know what? I'm going to ask you something. Am I under arrest?
You're not right now, no.
And what the fuck is this? What does he have in his pocket right here? It looks like a notebook of some kind. I wonder if it's like the address that he had. Like he wrote down like the instructions or something. But it's funny that he comes in with just this little fucking like this little notebook in his pocket for easy access.
Now you were here. No. I want you to sit down, please.
Yeah, you need to sit.
Can I go?
I want to talk to you a little bit more first. Please just sit down. Would you like some water?
No,
And it's so excellent that Chris doesn't give direct answers. The power that Chris wields over these guys, it's not a real form of power. It's the power of perception. It's just being able to manipulate people and create scenarios that aren't really what they are. So in these moments, Babst is just, he's mortified. In Babst's mind, Chris is this amalgamation of his peers, his boss, law enforcement, society, all these different things kind of converging as one accusatory force against him. But yeah, so the fact that Chris doesn't reveal whether he's law enforcement, Babs, he doesn't even know, but he's going to assume. It's kind of like the maximum like horror movies, like, the scariest shit is the shit that you don't actually see. It's like the shit that you can imagine, because your imagination is going to just run wild with whatever's scariest for you. And that's kind of the principle that Chris has with these guys. He wants to scare the fuck out of him, and he does effectively.
I'm about to puke.
He's gonna puke.
You were talking to a girl named Beth.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. You know what? I don't know. You
No, see, why would you say that?
No.
Chris asks, you were talking to a girl named Beth, and then Babst's immediate answer is yes.
Yeah, I think so. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I think so. So yeah, basically he's confirming. And then Chris says, okay, so you know her name is Beth. Babs says yes. Chris says, you know that she was a minor. Let's see.
You know what? I don't know.
You know how old?
No.
You know how old she is. And then Babs says no. But based off of his previous answer, all he had to go by was what the decoy had said in the chat and the phone call. The phone call we don't have access to, but the chat that we do. And in the chat, the decoy says that they're 12. So if Babs knew that the decoy's quote-unquote name was Beth, why wouldn't he also take her word that her age would be 12? There's no reason for him to believe one thing and then disbelieve another. He would either accept both of them as true because they're both from the same source, or reject them both outright. So him saying that he didn't know the age is bullshit.
What did her profile say, John?
Her profile said I'm in trouble.
Her profile said I'm in
Profile
trouble.
saying-
He uses all these metaphors like getting his ass kicked. Oh, what are you doing here? Getting my ass kicked. What did her profile say? Her profile said I was in trouble. Dude, it's like that's not actually what the profile said. If you clicked on the decoy's profile, it wouldn't say you're in trouble. It would have the stated age. But Babs, once again, I revert to him, kind of possessing more intellect than the average predator. And even it's evident in his speech and just the way that he talks, the way that he's capable of these seamless metaphors to be woven throughout his fucking bullshit.
She was how old?
She said 12 or 13.
12 or 13?
12 or 13. She didn't say 12 or 13. She said 12. What would a decoy say? How old are you? I'm 12 or 13. Like, bullshit, dude. You would hear one age, and if you knew the name and you recollected the name, you would also recollect the age. And also, that supports him being a sick son of a bitch. But I'll go over that here in a moment.
You know you were coming here for a 12 or 13-year-old girl.
No, I don't.
If the profile said
So he's correct. So you wouldn't know it, right? So this goes back to the different forms of logic. Deductive logic is about proving certainty. So a mathematical truth would be an example of deductive logic at work. The fact that 1 + 1 = 2 could be observed and seen as a deductive truth. Inductive reasoning is more about observing specific things and then suggesting that it's likely but not certain. So a lot of science is based on inductive research, on inductive reasoning, where we can't deductively prove things, but every time we've observed it, it's been consistent with this, and therefore we just consider it to be a scientific law. And then abductive, what I'm attempting to do is basically just an incomplete assessment. So I don't have all the information. Obviously, we all have limited information in deducing or in making these inferences. So that's what I'm attempting to do.
12 or 13.
My profile says 39. People, you put it on there. It's kind of a fantasy thing.
So
My
let's
profile says
analyze
13.
this
No,
through that lens.
no, I don't.
If the profile, so you know you were coming here for a 12 or 13-year-old girl.
No, I don't.
Yeah, he's correct. So he wouldn't know for certain, that he couldn't deductively, with certainty, prove that he was showing up to meet a person of any age. We could abductively assume that that's what he was intending on doing, but and we could abductively presume that that's what he suspected was going on, but we couldn't use deduction to prove that.
The profile said 12 or 13.
My profile says 39. People, you put it on there. It's kind of a fantasy thing.
And although, so his argument has merit. It's somewhat of a cogent argument. The fact that a person could be lying about their age. So therefore, given the inherent uncertainty, because people can lie, there's no absolutes when it comes to what a person actually is in regards to what they actually say, because people can lie. So the very admittance of people being deceptive, it undermines the ability to prove with certainty shit that they say directly.
Okay. I'm totally screwed. I know that.
He's
But
screwed.
It's forget it.
What are you doing here on a Saturday morning, coming into a house
He's getting his
where
ass
you believe
kicked,
a
you
12
know,
or
dude.
13-year-old kid is home alone with a
Why did
Saturday
Chris say
morning, coming into a house where you believe a 12 or 13-year-old kid is
12
home
to
alone.
13. Chris shouldn't have said that. I think Chris just should have insisted on 12. There was nothing about a 13-year-old. It was disturbingly a 12-year-old that Babst was talking to. So I think Chris lends him too much credibility to his bullshit story when he
With
says
no
that.
parents here. Do you have kids?
Yeah, I do.
Then how would you feel if some guy
I
in
would
his
feel-
40s
I-
walked into your house trying to hook up with your kids?
I feel pissed.
Exactly.
What do you do for a living?
But Babs doesn't give a fuck. Even though he'd feel pissed, even though he knows that it's hypocritical, he doesn't care. It's a part of the sick kind of selfish delusion that he has, in which it's just all about his pleasure and the consequences are irrelevant.
I'm in education.
You're an
He's an
educator.
educator.
A teacher. What grade do you teach?
High school.
High school.
Yes.
So this is very interesting as well. After his appearance on To Catch a Predator, Babst went back to work. He was able to post a $25,000 bond, and then the next day was, or that same day, was released, and then went back to work and didn't say anything about this. It was his lawyer who contacted school officials. Although under California law, Babst had the obligation to contact his school. So he failed to adhere to that. And it's very interesting that Babst would even try to go back to school after getting caught on this show. There's a lot of different theories about why he would. It's been discussed that maybe he just wants a return to normalcy. Maybe he just wanted a few more dollars on his, a few more dollars in his bank account just in case, because he knew he wouldn't be able to get that job again. But it's also very interesting to kind of think about why he would return back to work and why he would even, especially given the unique betrayal of a teacher being on this show. That's pretty much one of the biggest betrayals, as insofar as people can be hypocrites, people can violate oaths that they have in their profession. A teacher who does this shit, you're violating such a serious oath that you have and a serious obligation to society. So the fact that he would just go back and act like he didn't violate that, it speaks to a level of delusion and boldness that is just mind-boggling.
And you talk about this in your chat. Please.
It is basic.
I won't go anywhere. I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to go to jail.
Go to jail.
But I
See,
need-
Babs is all, dude, I'm going to be agreeable. Like, Babs realizes that it wouldn't be advantageous for him to like spaz out or like try and run away. Like, Babs knows that he's fucked. He's basically just articulating to Chris, he's all, dude, I'm just gonna trip out now, and you just have to deal with me tripping out because this is a serious situation. Like, Chris is like making him sweat so hard, and then he's also getting annoyed when like Babs responds. Like, Babs is responding to the heat that Chris is subjecting him to, and he can't respond sitting down. Like, the heat is so much that he has to walk around to fucking like just try and walk the steam
Just
off.
stay by the next step, please. What are you wearing at the moment? My boxers and tank top. I sleep in.
Please don't read it. I know what it says.
And then he said this.
And the fact that he says, please don't read it, I know what it says. So he's not disputing anything that he says. Right there, what he's confirming is everything that you're holding is true. That's what Babs is doing. So Babs isn't going, some of these guys like, the Jerry Griffith defense, Adriana, she told me on the phone, 22. And of course, the phone isn't, we can't recollect directly this phone call that he's talking about. Jerry could have argued, okay, the phone call I had with Adriana wasn't recorded, but it existed. However, Babst isn't doing that. Babst is saying, yes, the chat log that is in your possession, it's true. Everything in there is what I said. I already know what is in there. So if he already knows what's in there, we can reason that he knows that because he's the one who typed it, because he authored it.
Is that appropriate anyway? That's against the law right there.
Is it?
Is it?
Transmit that to somebody who you think is underage? Yes.
I didn't transmit it though.
I didn't transmit it. He did transmit it.
Somebody who
And
you
then
think is
his
underage?
flipping
Yes, I
around of the
transmit it,
photo.
Did No, I didn't transmit that to her.
The fact that he's like, oh, maybe from like a 90-degree change of angle, I'll be able to decipher what this is. They're just dick pictures of him. They're just pictures of him jacking off and whatnot. The fact that he does this little performance of trying to adjust the angle on it, that's purely to try and make it look like he doesn't know what it is. Once again, this is at odds with his previous statement that he already knows everything in the chat, because the photographs were sent in some way directly connected to the chat.
You did not.
No, that's on. I think it's online. It's under an adult profile.
I didn't okay.
You did not.
I didn't transmit it though.
This
Is it?
To transmit that to somebody who... that's
have to see
against the
this.
law right there.
Is it?
Is it?
To transmit that to somebody who you think is underage? Yes.
I didn't transmit it though. Did? No, I didn't transmit that to her.
You did not.
Look.
No, that's on. I think it's online. It's under an adult profile.
So this is a very interesting legal argument that could have unfolded. What does it mean to transmit something, right? So if you link someone to a certain image, or if you link someone to specific content, are you transmitting the content, or are you just transmitting the link? This is thought about typically when it comes to copyright, which I don't give a fuck. I use copyrighted shit all the time. I'll never monetize this channel. Or anything like that. I'll never have ads on it. But it's interesting to just wonder what it actually means to transmit something. Because in effect, you're transmitting it. If all you're doing is you're sending a link and then the person only has to click on it and then view whatever the link leads to, you could argue that you're transmitting it, but at the same time, you could argue that I'm not transmitting it. I'm sending out a link that merely connects you to it, which is not the same, it could be argued in a legal sense, as transmitting it. Sending the direct link for something versus sending the actual thing basically would be the distinction.
You didn't transmit this.
I mean, I think that he should be found guilty regardless, but there's a legal argument that could be made there, and that often is.
No,
in
honestly,
copyright
I don't
cases.
think that I did.
Please just keep
Yeah, I don't think I did.
There's nothing in there.
But once again, your defense that you didn't transmit the obscene images, it is at odds with your previous admission that you're a sick son of a bitch. And that you talk about this online and that you think about it all the time.
May I ask who
You see
are?
my pic in the chat window? Yeah.
Yeah, but
You think you would like that in you?
He's sitting there. He can't handle it. We go back to the closed posture, the covering up of vital organs. He's very nervous. He's defensive.
How big is it? Well, you saw. Go get a can of Coke.
Go get a can of Coke.
Dang, will it hurt? A little, yes,
Oh.
at first. Now, what?
And he had to
what
say
do-
Coke. That must have pissed Coke off. No one wants to be associated with this. Like, no beverage. Mike's was, justifiably kind of annoyed, from what I've heard, that To Catch a Predator was always specifically referencing mics. They were like, dude, chill out with the mics. Like, you're giving us a bad rep.
conclusion am I supposed to draw here, John?
I can't say anything. I'm done. I'm fried.
I'm done. I'm fried.
Well, there's,
Please
He is.
arrest me.
there's
See, he just wants it over.
I'm fried.
well, there's,
Please arrest me.
Please
there's,
arrest me.
there's one
He's
thing you
like,
got
dude, just please get it over with. I can't take
know
this.
first. Is that I'm Chris Hansen with Dayline NBC, and we're doing a story on computer code.
I'm in collapse mode.
Now, if there's anything else you'd like to say to explain yourself, we'd
And
like
in that moment, he realizes that his job, his marriage, his life, all of it gone in a moment, just based off of a conversation and an action, which was going to the house that he had online. He was so immersed in his fantasy and so disconnected from reality that he probably didn't ever think this would happen to him, and who knows at what point this kind of sick fantasy life that Babst had, this presumably hidden fantasy life, right? If Babst had only been with his wife, and he uses that kind of to imply chastity almost in a way, to say listen, I wouldn't come here to sleep with a decoy because I've only ever slept with my wife. That's kind of the point for that argument. So the fact that he says that, whether it's true or not, it's irrelevant, but it begs the question of when did he start indulging in this fantasy? When did the fantasy become so out of control that it became something he couldn't manage?
Here, if not, obviously you're free to go.
And he knows. So that was the kinky man in Corona. There's going to be a ton that I didn't get to cover, just a ton of shit that slipped my mind. If you have anything else that contributes to the discussion, like, post it in the comments, because I would love to hear what other people are able to extrapolate and infer based off of this interaction. Huge shout out to everyone who's liked, commented, and subscribed. It blows my mind that my channel has even had the moderate amount of attention that it has gotten lately, and I'm just really grateful for all of it. So until next time, everyone.